welcome back. Fred in the Shed 2. I hope everyone's okay. I hope you're all enjoying the sunshine. It's really nice here today. I thought I'd do a second video following up on this thermostat housing that we took off of the Volvo. And if you remember, the gasket around the thermo housing just here, this had fouled, which was this sort of tin and rubber gasket. This part had worn away with age, really. And when I contacted FRF Volvo, they said that that gasket was no longer available. So, not to be beaten, I've been onto the internet there and got some of this sort of high water temperature and steam gasket material. So what we're going to be doing in this part of the video is that I'm going to be doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to be making my own gasket, which should work absolutely fine. No reason why it shouldn't work. Now, I sort of went on a bit of a rant really on the last video when I was discussing the fact that I thought that car manufacturers were trying to get really the old cars off the road, and they didn't really want you sort of working on your own car or mucking about on your own car, as I said. And I still think that is true to a point, but I did have a conversation with a guy at work who up until very recently was in the motor trade himself, and obviously he wasn't at all surprised at my situation, not being able just to get a sort of a cheap gasket. And what he said kind of, well, it sort of does make sense, and it doesn't, if you know what I mean. But what he said was that a lot of, you know, for a number of years now, sort of main sort of dealerships, you know, are very reluctant to do sort of small but expensive repairs on cars, and changing like a gasket that was perhaps leaking around this area. He said what you've got to think about is the labour cost. Everything is sort of sold to you at a block labour cost. So, you know, if it's so many units to strip all of this down off the block to change the gasket, then it probably is more expensive labour wise than it would be just to unbolt this from the block and bolt a new one from stores. You know, if you've got to sort of take the section apart. And he said another thing he said they don't like to do is if especially on an older car, is if you start disturbing things, like for example with the thermostat, if you then undo the thermostat housing and you remove the sort of gasket, the chances are you might disturb the seal on the thermostat, and then later on down the road the thermostat doesn't start to work, or you've got the electrical connections here on the water sensor, temperature sensor, you could disturb that. So he said, you know, they really want to try to sort of avoid doing that. So it's much better for the garage just to simply bolt off an old part and bolt on a new part. So if you, for this part, for an example, if you bolted on a new part, well, not only are you fixing the gasket problem, you're getting a brand new thermostat. Well, you know, my car's 12 years old and the thermostat still works perfectly, but so you could sort of say that's another 12 years, and you're getting a brand new thermo sensor. So, you know, you're getting newer parts, so there's less. What they don't want people then bringing the car back and saying, well, you know, since you've messed about with my car, now this doesn't work and that doesn't work. So it causes issues, and it causes problems. So that's what he said. He said they would sooner fit a brand new part than sort of muck about changing your old part. And I suppose that makes sense. In, you know, oh, better put something under. Just one moment. Just about to cut into the good lady's table. That wouldn't be very good. So yeah, I suppose it makes sense in that respect. So to me, it's just alien, though. I mean, you know, perhaps a £3 or £4 gasket, and you've got to change something like £150 or £160 part with all of that aluminium housing, for example, that you don't really need. It just seems a waste, you know. Maybe it's my generation, but I can see his logic. but it just seems a bit of a waste to me, to be honest. But you know, that's what he said. He said, you know, it's quite common. Parts are not replaced and stripped down on the bench. Parts are not replaced. You know, you just put a new one on. So that was the answer to that. He doesn't think it's anything sinister about getting older cars off the road, but he said, of course, as the car becomes worth less money as it gets older, people are more reluctant to spend quite, you know, expensive bills, repair bills. They're more reluctant. So he says, you know, you get to a stage where some really nice sort of older cars are actually written off because of quite a simple repair. But people, you know, don't want to spend the money to get it repaired. They'd sooner go out and buy another car. So yeah, and that's before we get on to electronic problems, you know, with engine management systems. Everything, of course, is controlled by a central processor on a car. Before we get on to that, which is another thing, you know, you've got to think of cars, you know, in the future. For those of you that have got up to, you know, right up to date cars, Sean, for example, has got, you know, got a new car. Yeah, you've got to think of the touch. You know, you start thinking of the touchscreen technology. Now, most cars have got a sort of what's it called? An infotainment system. You know, with the touch screen. And the cars I've been looking at recently to replace one of my cars is obviously the analog dials have been replaced by digital. Now, you know, you've got to think, if that starts going wrong, hopefully it won't, and there's less moving parts, so it's a solid state thing, so really it's a tablet computer, isn't it? It shouldn't go wrong. But if that starts going wrong in 10 years time, the cost of a central display unit, TFT screen, is going to be quite sort of astronomical, isn't it? But anyway, as you can see here, I'm waffling on. I'm just going to cut myself a gasket from this special steam and water pressure resistant material, and then we'll get it fitted on the car. Got to put the car back together, and hopefully that'll work. So anyway, there you go. I'm just going to do this. I'll do this off camera because it's going to take too long. So thanks for tuning in for this bit. Boring as hell, isn't it, on Fred 2? Get over to Fred 1 if you want some proper videos. But anyway, I'll be back in a minute. So here's the gasket that I made out of the gasket paper, and thermostat itself, original thermostat that came with the car. I was thinking of replacing it, but to be honest, it's working absolutely fine, and it looks in good condition, no corrosion. So we're just going to put that back, and just going to seal it with a little bit of gasket seal. Going to use RTV silicon, which is a sort of heat resistant red gasket seal, and just going to put a little bit around that between the two surfaces, and yeah, put it sort of back together. And then I've just got to wait for the proper genuine gasket to arrive, for that to go onto the block, and then we can put it back on the car and start building the car up. So that's what we're doing today. So there we go, that's all done, and see the sort of silicon sealed. I think I'm going to leave that. I was thinking of wiping that round, but I think it'll make a mess. But, yeah, so there you go, that's ready now. That's the new gasket. I've got the thermostat back inside it. I did remember that. Wouldn't be the first time I've done something stupid, but anyway, yeah, there we go. That's sort of waiting now for the other gasket, and I can fit that on the car and start building it back up. So here we go, back out onto the car, and I did clean that gasket up. I knew I would. I knew I'd clean all of that sort of overspill up. Now, one thing that I don't know if you can sort of see, probably just about can see in there, that's concerning me, is that the gasket that I have made is very, very slightly thicker than the one that it's replacing, and it's very difficult to see in there. But so I have a concern now that might restrict the thermostat. When the thermostat opens, when it's bolted back to the block, that might restrict it, and that might cause the car to overheat if there's not enough water getting around there. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I won't really know until I put it on the car and run the car. I did try and sort of put this in boiling water just to sort of see if I could open the gasket, but it didn't really want to open. Maybe it needs a bit of water pressure. But anyway, so just waiting for this other gasket to turn up. That one is available still, and I've ordered one and it's fouled. I don't know why, but we haven't received it, so I've had to reorder it just to fit in there going onto the block. So once I get that in and get this old jalopy back on the road, and yeah, so it's going to be quite interesting when I start it up. I'll run the video, because I might have to turn it off quite quickly, but I will run the video. I don't think this will leak. I do think it seems to make quite a nice seal, that heat resistant silicone there, so I certainly think it'll be okay, it won't leak. But whether or not it's going to affect the opening of the thermostat, yeah, I know, it's all kind of like, so it's all worrying stuff in it. Maybe I should buy another new car. But where's the fun in that? Can't touch it for 3 years because of the warranty. Anyway, I will continue this video once the gasket has arrived. So just starting to build everything up now, and just putting the power steering pump on. The access to the bolts, I don't know if you can see it, you're actually they've got small cutouts in the pulley wheel that line up with the pulley bolts. So it's quite clever, I suppose, in its own way. Still quite tight though, there's very little room. So I had some fun and games getting the bottom bolt in there into the power steering pump. I basically dropped it and it disappeared right away down inside the engine block there. Didn't fall through the bottom, so I couldn't find it. I spent about 20 minutes with an aching back, putting my hands all inside the parts here, you know, trying to get my hands in. Couldn't find it, and then gave up for the day, a bit despondent on that, and then came back with some slightly fresher eyes, and it was just down here. Amazingly, can't really see that on the camera, but it had literally bounced and down there. So we got the drive belt back on there, the auxiliary serpentine belt. Managed to get that, and then start it up, and then all eyes will be on this, which is of course the thermostat. Still not sure whether that gasket will interfere with the operation of the thermostat, which is a little bit worrying. If it does restrict the thermostat, then unfortunately I'm going to have to take all this apart and just basically redo the job again. But I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. But it's all part of the fun of it, isn't it? Right. Anyway, I better crack on and get all this put back. Right, so the next thing to do is just to start the car. Hopefully the belt will stay on. Yeah, it will be. And then we've got about another litre of coolant to go in, so we've got to let the car warm up. The thermostat here should hopefully open, and then the coolant will drop as the water flows into the radiator. Then we can shut it off, let it cool down a little bit, and then just sort of top it up. And then just run it to vent it. We'll just run it with the cap off and let the air circulate out. If the coolant doesn't drop and the car gets hotter and hotter, then I know that thermostat is not opening properly, and then I'm in trouble, and we have to do all this all over again. So that's hopefully not going to be the plan of action. But anyway, let's see if it starts. It hasn't started for a few weeks, so first thing is whether it's actually going to kick over. Well, so far so good. So there it is running. So really all eyes on that coolant level. I'm expecting that coolant level to drop once the thing gets warm. New cam belt there going round. And then other than that, all eyes will be on the temperature gauge, which as you can see is on cold right now, but we'll be expecting that to come up the temperature, and then hopefully that thermostat's going to open up okay. I think it will, and everything, well, we're almost up to temperature, and the radiator pipe is excuse me while I kick the water over the radiator pipe. They're still stone cold. Starting to get a little concerned now. A little bit of doubt creeping in. I mean, it's got to get up to temperature, of course, but slightly warm there because you've got the slight little bleed valve that lets a little bit of water in. But don't know. It's always a little bit worrying, isn't it? It's always a little bit worrying. That is still not warm. Oh dear. See the air coming out there in the bottle. It's all the air in the system starting to come out. Well, the hose is getting warmer. I think we're okay. Well, yep, the hose is getting warm. And we're venting some air, which is it's a good thing. That'll be the air in the radiator. I'm expecting that level to drop though. Right, I'm doing this video, I don't know if you can actually hear me over the sound of the motor. The pipe's getting warm, I'm getting hot water coming through the pipe. That's a good feeling. That's great. Oh, yeah, that's definitely getting hot now. Definitely getting some hot water. And the water level's going down. I don't know if you can see that. It's hard to tell, but the coolant level's dropping. Oh, that's lovely and warm. That's a good feeling. That's a really good feeling. Yeah, coolant level dropping. Hot, yeah, definitely hot, that hose now. Almost too hot to touch. Which means the thermostat is open, no cooling fan on. Happy days. Like it, happy day. So there we go, everything holding steady, temperature gauge dead steady there at 45 degrees. So I think I'm going to bring this one to a close. Sorry if it's been a bit boring, it's Thread 2. I try and put up some sort of stuff that I wouldn't put up normally on Thread 1. Feel free to subscribe to Thread 2 if you want to see some more of this sort of mechanical type videos. I don't really promote Thread 2 very much, but your subscription's always more than welcome. I do sort of check the subscription rate. As for now, thank you for sticking with it. It's a bit of a long one. Please stay safe, look after each other, and of course, as always, I will catch you all on the next one. Cheers.